Good morning. Happy Saturday. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning for our Domestic Violence Awareness panel and discussion. We are in for a dynamic conversation this morning, and we will be introducing our panelists soon, but first I'd like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Fazi Sabi.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us and helping us with this very important conversation. I'm Fazi Sabi. I'm an OBGYN, clinically practicing, and also one of the associate medical directors from Kaiser Permanente. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I feel so honored to have such amazing women standing beside me, sitting beside me, and having this really important conversation. So quickly, we'll do some introductions, and then we'll dive right in. So Takitha Wilson, may I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Happy Saturday, everyone. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I am Takitha Wilson. I serve as the founder and CEO of Gridiron Terminal, which is a sexual assault and domestic violence prevention program, a company that focuses strictly in the area of sports and entertainment, teaching preventive measures in using a public health approach. I also serve as the ministry lead for domestic violence at the Shepherd's House International Christian Church. So I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to serve. Last but not least, I am a survivor of domestic violence and also a public health official where I'm able to share both sides of the story.
Thank you. Ms. Stephanie Leah.
Good morning, everyone. I am Stephanie Leah. I am the intake supervisor at Metalworks Behavior Health and the lead therapist. I have been in this field for over 25 years, providing therapeutic services, worked in the mental health arena as well as criminal justice. I was recently retired as a juvenile probation officer in the District of Columbia, so I've had years of experience working in this population, with this population, I should say, as well as being a witness survivor of domestic violence.
Thank you. Ms. Bobby Harvard.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bobby Harvard. I work for the Office of the Sheriff. I've been there for over 17 years, and currently I am working providing services through the community, it's community outreach. But the program that we definitely have been involved with the last 17 years is the domestic violence division, where we work with clients that have filed protective orders and peace orders, trying to educate them, inform them about what directions are and what resources are available for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kathy Ferguson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kathy Ferguson. I'm with the University of Maryland Capital Region Medical Center. I work in the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Unit, and this unit has been around in the county for over 50 years. So we're probably about the longest serving type of service provider in the county. We've been doing great work over the years working with individuals who've been impacted by dating violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. And although we are the designated rape crisis center for Prince George's County, and there's 17 across the state of Maryland, and we are the one for Prince George's County, we also do, of course, do domestic violence, which we added to our array of services back in 2010. In this last year, we actually had it's unfortunate that we have to do the services that we do. We always want to be put out of business, but we did actually offer over 4,000 direct services to individuals who've been impacted by one of those types of issues. So we are a 365-day operation, 24/7. There's never a time that you can't call our facility and get some type of help. You will always talk to a human person. We have 16 FNEs that work with us. We have 14 domestic violence and sexual assault advocates. We do criminal justice advocacy. We, of course, do medical clearance. We do community outreach, which is my job. And just want to make sure that people know that there is a safe, confidential place that they can report to if they're ever in need. So if you, a friend, loved one, need to make that contact, please make sure you call our hotline, because we do have that crisis line. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
And Ms. Vivian Abiseki?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Vivian Ebisike. I am from House of Ruth, Maryland. I am their community engagement specialist. And House of Ruth, Maryland is, of course, a domestic violence nonprofit that's been around for almost 50 years. And we help serve individuals or families who are going through an intimate partner violence situation. So we have our shelter and our rapid rehousing program that helps anyone who's in need of shelter. We also have like hotel partnerships where for temporary stays, if they are in dire need of shelter, but our shelters are usually full, so that's where we usually place them. We also have grocery assistance, rental assistance, anything with our service coordinators. If they have other needs, but they don't want to leave their abusive situation yet, we have our abusive intervention program that actually has the abusive partner understand understand accountability, understand how to cultivate a healthy relationship once they truly understand that they are abusing. And we also have our training institute, which actually is the department that educates the community, which is also where I'm from, where we educate any community entity, whether it's schools, churches, places like the town of Bladensburg, about what abuse is, what it looks like, and how to support and empower people who are going through an intimate partner violence situation for prevention and intervention purposes.
Thank you. And on the line, we have Dr. Blessing Akiko. If you want to introduce yourself.
Morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here, and I serve as the founder and operations coordinator for Blessing Akiko Global. I'm calling my other company Base Pillar Foundation. Base Pillar Foundation, and we are a faith-driven organization that stands at the heart of advocacy, healing, and empowerment for survivors of domestic and gender-based violence, among other things. Our work began originally in the southwest region of Cameroon, that is West Africa, but I am currently here in the United States, Texas. But what we've learned is that violence has no borders. Violence has no geographical specifics. Violence is violence. Whether in Africa or here in the United States, the pain looks the same. And so does the need for compassion, awareness, and action. At our Pillar Foundation, we walk with survivors through very, I would call it, sensitive stages, and every stage, from trauma to counseling to recovery to building safe spaces and helping them rebuild economically, because that's one of the things we realized sponsors a lot of this. We believe that healing begins where awareness meets compassion. That's one thing we've always stood for. It is not okay for people to just know if the compassion and zeal is not there to literally see these survivors, we don't call them victims, survivors of such evil, as I may put it. And at that, every survivor carries the potential to become a pillar of strength and hope in their community. So we've worked hand in hand with other organizations so as to, make use of our individual resources in order to build a community. Being here in the United States, I came to realize that indeed violence is violence. There's no boundary, whether in the US or out, the context does not change the effect. But we have realized some differences as well. And I'm hoping to share once the opportunity presents itself. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for joining us today. I do want to recognize that this is an intense, often difficult, very emotional, and very personal conversation. The fact that we're all here, the fact that we showed up, the fact that we care is really, really important. For those of us, for those of you who are listening here live, listening live, or listening to this recorded conversation, take a moment and just feel safe. Know that you are loved. Know that we are here for you. And if you need to take a break, if you need to stand up, if you need to turn off the recording, if you need to walk away, that is okay, because we will still be here when you're ready to listen to this conversation. If you feel like you're in a place that you need help, remember that 988 is available, as well as a lot of people who want to be here for you, because we're having this conversation for you. This topic crosses all communities, all people, genders, races, ethnicities, ages. If you're rich or you're poor, it can impact anyone, anytime. And if we think about it, every one of us who's here, it has either impacted us personally or with someone who we love and want to protect. So again, I just want to pause and just say thank you. Thank you for showing up. And I just really look forward to this conversation where, one, it's healing for us, and two, we just reach someone out there who's listening who may need to hear these words of love, these words of what do you do and how do we help you? And if you have someone that you are caring for who's in this situation, we hope to give you some pearls of how you can help them. And if you're in this situation, know that we're here for you and we care about you. So one of the things, we hear domestic violence. We often call it intimate partner violence. It's called a lot of different things. And it's violence. And it's hurtful. And it comes in many different forms and shapes. I'm looking at our panelists to say, who wants to put a name to it, a definition of what intimate partner violence is, what domestic violence is?
Well, what I wanted to talk about is domestic violence according to the definition from the Department of Justice. And they said that domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner to gain and maintain control over an intimate partner. It is about power and control. That's what domestic violence is. And there's so many misconceptions out there. There's so many myths that are out there that can actually cause someone to pause, to freeze, to not move, to move forward, because it's so devastating. There are four that comes to mind. That the myths that we see is that it happens only to poor people. If someone is remorseful for their behavior, it's going to change. Occasional slap, that's not serious. Or even it's a monetary loss of temper. But those are all myths, because the fact is that it crosses all those lines that you mentioned. I have worked with, over the last 30 years, over working with victims that have advanced degrees or maybe under government subsidy, employed, not employed. I've worked with victims that are in key roles, make six figures. I've worked with victims who family members get tired because they are not moving forward. But it's not just poor families. It crosses all those lines. Remorse, we see that a lot. Once an incident has happened of abuse, someone may say, I'm sorry, baby, let's do some counseling, let's talk to the pastor. But really, we realize that that is just a manipulative tool that is used to keep that person in that relationship. And then occasional slap is not serious, absolutely is a myth, because there's such a progression with domestic violence. It grows. It may have started out with shut up behind closed doors. Then it progressed to the point that maybe you are insulted in front of family members and friends. It is a progression with domestic violence. You know, there's that bark before the bite. There's a hitting of something before someone is hit. So we see that progression. And then lastly, a monetary loss of temper? Absolutely not. It's quite the opposite. An abuser will choose who, when, and where they're going to abuse. And so when you're looking at domestic violence, you're looking at something that is truly impacting not just the family, but it is impacting the community.
I wanted to add to the misconception part. A lot of times people think that domestic violence only occurs and happens to women. This is a panel full of women. What you do not see here are the men and the boys who too are victims of domestic violence. Power and control is the basis of an abusive relationship, as Ms. Bobby defined according to the Department of Justice. But like she said, it crosses all boundaries, all genders, all forms of relationships. So it could even be in a work environment that you can experience domestic violence. How many times have we seen in the news where an abuser have showed up to someone's workplace to maintain that power and control? Another instance is we have to consider the fact that when she gave the forms of the myths, oftentimes it starts when we're really young, the impressionable ages, 12 years old, 15 years old, when we're in the developmental stages of our growth. Before we even get to adulthood, we could have already experienced multiple cycles of trauma, not even knowing exactly what it was. The first relationship that you had, how did that formulate your mind and begin to shape how you make decisions in your relationships as an adult? And so when we look at domestic violence, how is that person constantly maintaining power and control? Where are they limiting you in your decision-making, in your accessibility to your support system or your communities, or even your family members? Another form of a misconception is that if you are a person who, you know, is trained and you're speaking on domestic violence, that it cannot happen to you. Yes, it can. It can show up at anyone's doorstep. And so that's something that we have to, as a community, be aware of. We can never turn a blind eye and think, oh, no, it has not happened. We all know someone who has survived it, whether it was directly in our house, next door to us, a coworker or peer that we may be working with. So it's happening, one, in our school systems and in our communities, but we also need to take a look at the conception that it only happens in the adulthood stage. No, it's very early on in the developmental stages of our development as human beings.
That's so powerful.
I just wanted to add, you know, a lot of times we always look for the visible signs that is physical, and I just wanted to emphasize that it's not always that case, right? It could be very emotional. It could be a withdrawing of finances, and I think you spoke about that. But it could be sexual or digital, right? We see that now with social media. So I just wanted to emphasize that it's not always physical. We always look for the physical, visible signs that we can see, but it's also emotional.
And I do want to just add to what's been said, because you do have the actual definition. But when we're looking at it in households and we talk about power and control, what we're really saying is that there's one person that's using their power to enact control of another person. So they're trying to get a desired outcome, a desired behavior response, a desired feeling from that. And they're going to do things, the violence that they enact is going to be either to intimidate, to humiliate, or to cause pain and injury. And so those are those three tactics that are used to actually maintain that control over another person. And so it can be spiritual, it can be sexual, it can be all the different ways that, it manifests. But again, the core of that is to control that person, to get that desired outcome result from them. So I do want to make sure if anybody is feeling that in their relationship, that is unhealthy. So hopefully what we're saying will get you to recognize that and to seek some type of assistance. So, thank you.
Also to add, thank you so much, ladies, for sharing what you have shared so far. Just to add to what has been said already on the panel is that there's a reason why we're starting to shift from domestic violence to intimate partner violence, and it's because a common misconception is that it can happen just between two people who are living together. But the thing about it is that when it comes to certain forms of abuse, like financial or cultural abuse, where people are using people's immigration status or their religious beliefs or their race, things of that nature, like it can be when they are not living together. And why we're calling it intimate partner violence is anyone who has had a romantic or sexual relationship, and that allows it to be more broad.
Dr. Akiko?
Can I chip in? Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was okay. I really do appreciate every feedback that we just had because I feel like it already cuts across the board. But one thing I've also come to realize is the fact that people often assume that when the abused leaves the abuser, once they separate, it automatically means everything is fine. When in truth, post separation abuse is often the most dangerous period because sometimes, unfortunately, the abused gets, the abused gets, sorry, I got a little distracted. The abused gets to build a trauma bond with the abuser. Sometimes we're talking about a child because we have looked at it from the intimate part of it, but sometimes it's a child. Sometimes it's a parent over a child. Sometimes it's a child over a parent, depending on what the circumstances are. And you find that it is harder because I have worked with people who have literally found themselves going back to the same context. The moment you thought you had gotten somewhere with them, they return. Now, the survivor was not returning because they are belittling any work that is being done with them. It's just that there's been that trauma bond. So separation seems like moving away from an addiction. It's like moving away from a drug you've been so dependent on. So that is one other thing that I felt to just throw in there. And I love the fact that we mentioned it's not just physical. Back in Cameroon, West Africa, I came to realize before we've been moving here that most times we have limited it, like one of our amazing panelists said, to physical punches, kicks, and slaps. But I often say that a wound on your face is easy to be attended to. It's easy to attend to a wound because you can see it. But the one that is within can actually take the life of the person without you even knowing. And that's why I usually say that domestic violence awareness is more effective when compassion meets that awareness because it makes us look beyond the lens of the physical and start asking ourselves what has happened within. And I noticed that it is all about a power struggle. I loved what the last speaker said about even immigration status. I'm speaking as someone who's an immigrant as well. So That power tussle of I've been here, you just came, so I can manipulate things to keep you under my thumb, to keep you under my control, to keep you tied to my apron strings. It's one of the things that I think the immigrant population actually face here. And not many can speak about it because they're scared of what the result will be. So this violence really cuts across the board, regardless of what the context is. I just wanted to throw that in there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You know, someone who may be listening, someone who may be watching, someone that they care deeply for, they're like, this surely cannot be happening to me. This isn't what this is. What advice do you guys have for someone who's in it, who is in it? They may be in denial. They may be in that fight or flight moment. What do you tell someone about recognize it for what it is and be honest with yourself? Because I think a lot of us in many different aspects of our life, we're like, no, it can't be me. What would you just say to someone who's listening?
If I was talking to someone, I first want to be able to have the understanding that it is hard to walk away from a life you thought you were going to have with somebody. You built a life.
Hit your button one more time.
Okay. It's hard to walk away from a life you thought you were going to have with someone. You married this person. You've been dating them since high school. You have babies with this person. You buy a home with this person. So in your life is, in your mind, you had your life planned. And so now this balance has come into my life. So what is it that I'm going to do? Well, Doctor mentioned about how hard it is to walk away and the dangers. In fact, statistics tell us that 75% of women in domestic violence relationships do leave. But once they leave, they are stalked, they're harassed, and some are killed. So they're at their most vulnerable state. So when you're talking to someone, you don't tell them what to do. You talk about what options are available so they can apply it so that they can be safe if they choose to leave. But it's not our role to push or pressure them into leaving or to even making a choice they're not ready for. Our role is to be there, to understand, to hear, and to believe what they're saying. Validate those feelings. Those are real.
I would add that, first of all, you're not crazy. A lot of times when you keep hearing it, you know, you're nothing or you'll never be nothing, you start to believe, but then it also brings your resiliency levels down. You no longer want to fight the same fight anymore. So I'm speaking from a survivor's perspective. It's okay if you don't want to leave today. It's all right. If you decide to leave, though, set up a safety plan, somebody who you trust, to set up a way of escape, because one day you will be strong enough to leave. It's our hope that you will survive, because not everybody makes it. African American women are the highest rates of fatalities, not only in the state of Maryland, in the county of Prince George's County, we lead. These are numbers that are not favorable for us, because everyone who is a female that is of African American descent, the statistics show us that we're dying. We're not living to tell of survivorship. We're not living to be able to say, here I am, I made it through. I'm thankful that I can stand before you all. But it does take a lot of resiliency, tenacity. Because for some people, you may be single, but what happens to a person who has a family of 5 or a family of 3? I have one child. I was fighting for myself and my child. My child witnessed it. So I had to always think about my child. Now, what I did utilize the services that were within my county. At the time, I did have to go to court and file a restraining order. I had never endured and never had been in the court system ever in my life. I didn't know how to navigate it. I didn't know, oh, were you supposed to have a lawyer? I did go to the House of Ruth. Thank you. But for me, at my income level at the time, I was not eligible to receive services from the House of Ruth, which was devastating to me. Because here I am, a taxpayer, saying, well, I pay into these services. Why can't I receive the help? But I was over income. So for someone, sometimes you may be in a big mansion in Woodmore in the state of Bowie, in the city of Bowie. You may be in a one-bedroom studio. Whenever you decide to leave, whoever you decide to trust, keep working with them, even if you give them a little bit at a time. If I say, Stephanie, can you hold $5 for me today? I'm going to see you next week when I get to work. Next week, I'm going to give you a copy of my ID. Next week, I'm going to give you a copy of my child's birth certificate for the school system, okay? But I need you to just be here for me, okay? Can you listen to me? Don't judge me, Stephanie. Just listen to what I have to say. Can you be that person with an active listening ear? Can I give you a code word to say, all right, today's sunshine. Sunshine is a code word. That means I'm leaving today. I'm not going back, Stephanie. Whatever we decided we were going to do, this is what we're going to do. Today is the day. Can you give me the hug? And can you speak life into me that when I go forth, I have enough courage to do that? Because once you decide to leave, that is the highest time of volatility. Remember, you're leaving a partner who wants and continuously and constantly wants to maintain power and control, and they will go to any extent to maintain that, even unto death. That is the magnitude of what we see at the level of violence. So when I decide to leave, I have to keep on thinking about what is behind me, who is there. So no one understands what the level of anxiety, fear, paranoia that comes upon a person once they do decide to leave. That's a real reality, okay? And so you have to think about when you go to the court system and you file a restraining order. I had to take my restraining order to my job. Now my boss knows. My boss referred me to our employee assistance program because she noticed my performance had changed. That was really good. She saw something that was different, right? Then I had to go to the school system, take it to the school, because now we have to think about the safety, even down to your very pet, your dogs, your cats, whatever type of pet you have, your livestock, if you have cattle. You have to think about these things because this is the magnitude in which domestic violence impacts that much. It impacts the community. Okay, so when you consider the fact that, yes, you have had broken bones, you had bruises, scars, you've had all these things that happen, those are hospital bills that are building up. So can I go to Stephanie and say, you know what, Stephanie, I never asked you for money, but can I have $25 because I need to go to the doctor today to pay my copay when I go? Can you be that support system for me? This is what it looks like when we're planning and working on a plan to escape. But no, you're not crazy. And whenever you decide to leave, there's always a way of escape. And yes, you can do it. There's no level of fear that can stop you once you have a mind made up to go forth and to live and keep living. I'm a living testimony that I can share that I'm still living. I'm still here.
Thank God.
And that's what I'm most thankful for.
First things first, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you, God, for your life. And thank you so much for using your, turning your pain into purpose and doing the great work that you do. And just to add to what the amazing panelists said, I would say that if I were to talk to a victim of intimate partner violence, I would say that it's not your fault. Abuse is never your fault. Unfortunately, in our society today, whenever abuse happens to women, even though intimate partner violence can happen to across all genders, it disproportionately happens to women. And so because of that, they somehow turn it around and make it seem as if it's the victim's fault. They would say, oh, because you did this, what did you do to provoke them? It's your fault for staying, or it's your fault for going back, and not recognizing that there's so many factors for why they stay. And I think that it is so important that we not ask why victims choose to stay or why they choose to do what they do, but why do abusers choose to abuse? Yeah, thank you.
I just want to add, it is so critically important to believe the survivor, believe the victim, right? When they're going through that, they need someone to be able to trust, be able to share their story, what they're going through, like Lakeithia spoke of, just being there for them, because it's very difficult. They've already been isolated from their family. They really don't feel like they have any support. So believe in them, not questioning them, not doubting them, because a lot of times we do, it's like, oh, such and such couldn't do that. I don't believe they're behaving like that. I've never saw that. You have to believe them, right? And just be able to support them, right? I got a call last night from a cousin of mine who's going through very exact things. And what do you need me to do? I'm here for you. If you just need somebody to talk to, sit with you, just let me know what you need, you know. She has court. Court can be very intimidating, right? I worked for the court system for 23 years. Very intimidating for people that's never navigated through that, right? Do you need me to go with you to court, you know? So being able to be that support and being able to provide some sense of safety for them, because like you said, it has to be a plan, it has to be a process. It doesn't happen all at once. But being able to commit to that process with the victim as they're going through their process.
Thank you guys for your insights, for everything that you have shared. So we've defined it. We put a name to it. It comes in many different names, many different shapes, many different sizes. And for most people, you don't even know you're in it for a long time until one day you're like, oh my gosh, that's me. And you never think it's going to happen to you. We talked a little bit about it, but I want to be very concrete and have exact things that someone who now has a name to what's happening to them, someone who is like, that's me, or that's my sister, or that's my cousin, or that's my child, or that's my parent. Can we now talk about some very tangible, concrete things that they need to start thinking about? And you started with those things, putting money aside, the papers. But if we wanted to give someone the tools, so now they're like, okay, that's me, I'm in it. That's my loved one, they're in it. What are some very tactical things that they can do and start thinking about? It may take them years, but what can they do? Bobby.
The one important document that you could ever give a victim is a safety plan. It will be personalized. It will help them to plan. No one wants to plan for the next time you're going to be beat, but you can plan, what will I do, where will I go, and how will I get there to flee. So that safety plan is personalized, and then once it's developed, practice it. Don't just put it in a safe spot, pull it out. If the children are a part of the plan, teach them what their role is, because it could be between life and death. You don't want to always bring your children in, get them involved, but sometimes they need to know. If you see this type of altercation happening in the home, we have a phone under the bed that's already geared up. All you have to do is call 911, call for help. There are concrete things that you can do to include and help with that safety. But first, that safety plan has to be developed, because if a person leaves before they have a plan, the probability is great that they're going to have to go back because they don't have a concrete plan. But if you have a concrete plan, you know where you're going, what it's going to take you to get there. And if you have small kids, you're going to need those documents to prove that those children are yours. You're going to have to start over. And when you're fleeing, the probability is great that you're going to be homeless. So what are you going to do? So you have to have a concrete plan to move forward.
Just knowing what resources are available, because in order to actually craft a good safety plan, you need to talk to professionals. So I think contacting any of us that are here, any of our particular agencies, is a good way to start. We have other partners in the community like CAFE and Family Justice Center, where people can actually go and get that help. If you can't go, you can certainly call and get information. There's information on the internet. So just doing some basic research around what options are out there and where you feel more comfortable. Some people may be more inclined to have a more spiritual or religious approach. There's certainly a lot of churches in the area who in recent years have developed really strong and comprehensive domestic violence types of programs. So connecting with them, if that's what you're more comfortable with. If you want a more legalized approach, that's another option. With the Prince George's County Sheriff's Department and things of that nature. So for us, being a hospital, people come to us that sometimes never intended to actually come our way. They're coming in for maybe a broken jaw, maybe internal bleeding, maybe strangulation, something that happened as a result of their assault, like a physical assault. And in that way, we're able to screen and actually ask questions. So I think anybody here that is Generation X, we all sort of remember when there was a transition, when you even went to your primary physician, where you would get questions. And I think Kaiser was actually pretty instrumental in moving this along with stakeholders that were working in the field, that you would ask questions like, do you feel safe at home? So being able to screen those questions, but people will come to us, and because we're asking those questions, then they become a client, because we can do an intake with them. We can go to them and say, hey, we noticed that, this might be your third time coming into the hospital, and this is this type of injury. We're concerned about X, Y, Z, and then talk to them or ask if it's okay to speak with them, give them resources and information and so forth. So I really think it's about helping people connect to the service providers, and there are so many in the county, that can help individuals.
And I just wanted to add that being able to connect with a good clinician, right, to help you process through the emotional and mental turmoil that you're going through, right? Because a lot of times you do feel like, I'm crazy, I'm losing my mind, I don't know what to do, just to help you process through what you're experiencing, help build you back up, right? Because at this time you're broken, and just being able to rebuild, help you kind of just slow the process down so that you can think it through and work your plan, your safety plan. Because you're afraid, you don't know who to talk to, you don't know who to trust. So being able to have that outlet where you're validated in your experience and just and beginning to feel empowered again. I think that's really important. So just being able to, because a lot of times we dismiss the mental health piece and the emotional piece because we just focus on the physical, but just being able to make that connection for them as well, because it's so important.
What I wanted to add is that currently right now I run a support group. We always encourage to do both the support group for their mental support, or it's called the Stay in Touch, where once a person has probably filed for their protective order, they have moved out and moving forward and trying to regain some normalcy of their lives, they come to a support group, but they also need that mental health piece. And so, but they also need to be around some of their peers that have experienced some of the same things. And it's in a safe environment where no one is judging, no one is putting them down, everyone is understanding this is where you are, and that's okay. It's hard for them to get to that place, but once they are there, then you start seeing the healing. You start seeing that person move from victimization to becoming healthier, and then they are a survivor. and then they start to thrive. And it is the most wonderful experience to see when you're working with victims of domestic violence.
One more thing that you can do is call 911 and order a pizza. You can order a lot of different pizzas. You know, it may seem weird, but the dispatcher, a lot of training has gone into receiving the call and deciphering the call, right? And so that's something that's really different. You're calling 911 to order a pizza. And when you order a lot of pizzas, okay, they will come to your home and get you out of there. That's an emergency response right there. So if you can't remember anything else, call 911 and order some pizzas and have them come and do a delivery to your home.
Thank you for saying that.
Can I pitch in, please?
Of course.
The previous question I actually had a response with regard to my own personal experience, but just to get back to this one, I love all the different strategies, but one thing I've come to realize as well is that we often pay much attention to survivors, and sometimes we forget about perpetrators. In order to shift the culture, in order to shift mindsets, we would also need to start focusing on building and building the perpetrators. What I mean by this is this: it is even more effective when a perpetrator becomes an activist. I remember one of the cases we handled, or I was part of, in Cameroon. We had a man who had abused his wife over and over, physically, verbally, and otherwise, and she passed. And before she passed, he kept on saying, "Nobody can do anything to me. Nobody can do anything to me." I think that was basically because he was from a well to do family, and then she wasn't. And there is also this idea of shame, the shame culture, where when a survivor is trying to explain or express what they've been through, the community tends to shame them. I think one of the panelists did mention something earlier when she said that when I'm telling you what's going on, don't judge me. We want to understand first. But the reason I'm talking about perpetrators is because if a mindset of a perpetrator can be shifted, if whatever faulty beliefs they had can be worked on. So whilst we're always looking for punishment for the perpetrator, as much as we are looking for help and recreation for the survivor, it will be very productive, I believe, if we start doing that for perpetrators as well. Some of these people also came from broken homes. Some people have been part of a broken system. Some men have lived abuse, so they know nothing else but abuse. And that's the reason why I'm going to chip this other part in, which is our schools, our churches, our workplaces should start incorporating zero tolerance toward any form of violence, whether verbal, all the bullying and all of that. Children learn to accommodate the wrong love, the wrong form of love. They learn to accommodate being talked down on when their mates can do it to them at a young age. And they grow up, that woman grows up with that battered identity. That young boy grows up with that battered identity. So we see that perpetrators perpetrating these acts starts from even tender ages. So I think that perpetrators should also be put in this conversation, as in they should also get recreation. Their mindsets should be healed. Their thought patterns, the things that they have experienced can also be broken down so that they can become activists as well. Just before I let go of the mic, earlier we were talking about the person who has lived it. I was abused when I was just 12. And this was a family member, older than I am. And this person happened to be clergy at the time as well. So at the end of the day, it seemed like I could not trust anybody. It looked, and I was also a kid. I did not have the vocabulary. I did not have the words to say whatever I had experienced. I just know I had experienced something that was not good, was hurtful, but I did not know how to put it to words. I did not have the terminology. So if children as early as their, I don't know what ages I would call, but probably younger than I was, can start being able to know what is not right, what is not acceptable behavior. It could help save them, not just as kids, but as adults. In my case, as a survivor, I recall that I lived not in the prison of the world, but my own mental prison. For years, I became a tomboy. Today, you see me with jewelry, but that was not my reality. I became a tomboy, not that I had interest in a woman, no, but I wanted to act like a guy. I had to shift my identity so that I'm not perceived as something desirable by any older person or just someone of the opposite sex. So all of that played a part. But by the mercies of God, he broke me free. I say that because my help was not just human, it was more of a divine stepping in. And that's why I say our faith walk with God also matters a lot when we're going through trying times like this. I was scared of being shamed, even though it wasn't my fault. I was only a kid. And this culture of shame has to come to an end. If we need to help survivors, we need to stop shaming them. And I'm going to pull this to the men. Men have been thought to be strong. Most times when we speak, we piggyback to women, but men have been thought to be robots. They've been taught not to express their pain. They've been taught to bottle it in. Because when a man cries foul, most times we're like, are you sure? Didn't you do something? Are you? It's not always just a woman. It's not always just a woman. There are men watching us right now. There are men in the hall who have experienced abuse from an intimate partner, from a family member. They've experienced it, but they fear that sharing that emotion, crying, pouring out, being vulnerable can be used against them. It can literally be used against them. So we need to stop shaming. The community needs to stop shaming. We need to handle what we post on social media about people. Someone cannot be going through an abusive relationship and maybe going through physical abuse, and you are recording. You find people recording for content's sake, recording to go viral. What if that act alone could be the reason why that person ends up committing suicide? What if that act alone is the reason that person cannot bring themselves to accept any form of healing? Because even though we have worked with them, created the safe spaces, they are healed, they are recreated, they're coming out, they're trying to get back to who they were before, their identity before abuse. And they stumble upon this particular video. Someone recorded instead of stepping in. I don't mean you need to be in between the blows and punches, but what I mean is rather than record and put it out there, it would be better you do nothing, because that is also abuse. The fact that you did not do it directly to them or they did not know you does not mean you did not abuse them. It's their privacy, it's their life. And last thing I'm going to say, voice and value matters. Once the survivors start learning that there is safety, it will be easier for them to speak forth. Once they know that I am safe, once I know I'm not going to get the hatchet, they will open up. Churches should not blame them. Communities should not do that. Centers that are homeless shelters or safe houses should truly be safe. And let those who are handling the cases also learn confidentiality. Some people's messages have gone out when they did not put it out. So I just wanted to put in some of this to see that we're not just looking at it from the home itself, but the community and the part that they play in all of this. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. We've talked about what it is. We talked about a safety plan. We know that it is actually dangerous to have a written safety plan. And sometimes that safety plan has to be in someone's head, and they just have to plan and know where those things are. We know that part of a safety plan includes having some money, having your documents, having a place to go. One of the biggest challenges with intimate partner violence, with domestic violence, is the social isolation. It's not having a Stephanie in your life because all the Stephanies in your life have been taken away. And so one of the things that I do want to talk about is, how does someone who's now identified they're in it, who has that safety plan in their head, in writing, what if they don't have someone safe that they can give their documents to? What if they are being watched every minute of the day and they can't go to a resource? They can't go somewhere to get that information. You know, I, as a physician, I create that safe space for the people who see me. And sometimes we sit there and we just talk, no exam, nothing else, because that is what, you know, the person who's in front of me needs. And so we as clinicians are a safe place to go to. And sometimes you just go and you talk. But any advice, so I love, you know, calling the police department. You know, that is a safe place if you have no other place to go. If someone is listening and they're like, but I don't have a Stephanie in my life, I can't go to any of these resources, what other tips, what other things can we tell someone who may be listening who needs to create that safe space for themselves?
Well, I do think there's a way to create those communities for yourself. And I think if there's been an incident, and we have to rely on our fellow partners, our neighbors that are around us who we may not have a relationship with, but if they hear something, if they can call 911, if you can get a call out to 911, I know that the sheriff's office has been really good about coming out and assessing the situation. There used to be a time when they would like take both the perpetrator and the victim both to jail and that kind of thing, but they're able to, you know, sort of sort out what happens. And I think that's a really critical point, inflection point, because if a police officer is able to come in, make a determination about who the batterer is and arrest them, then you have a little window of time. You have a little window of time to get a protective order and to get connected with some type of services and support. And I think that most of the agencies here have ongoing types of counseling or types of intervention, so case management. So your case manager, they're not, maybe won't become your best friend, but that person can become a safety support for you. And like Bobby said earlier, you know, she's had people that have come in through the office of the sheriff, and then they're continuing to have counseling sessions, peer group sessions, and things of that nature. So you can create that, you know, and people that are professionals can help you reconnect with maybe people that you have been isolated from and try and help bridge those gaps. You have therapists that can do the same, you know, help you reconnect with family members, help you bridge divides that may have been created as a result of the abuser. But I do think that, you know, actually being able to take that little window of opportunity where the perpetrator is out of the home, take advantage of that time to execute your safety plan and to coordinate services with those that you get connected with. That would just be my answer, so, right now.
Thank you. And just, you know, a lot of times in these forums, we talk about what it is. We talk about identifying it. We talk about that safety plan. Can we just talk about that journey? What is a protective order? What does that mean? And also, like, what happens in the court system. I think, for a lot of people, as they're thinking about, okay, I'm that person, or my loved one is that person, I'm in it. I recognize it. I know I need a safety plan. I got my safety plan. I have no idea what the other side looks like. And sometimes that journey is as hard, and you have to be prepared for it. So how do we prepare someone just to understand, what does a protective order look like? What does it mean to go through the court system?
For me, I can share my testimony regarding my journey. So, again, I had never navigated the legal system prior to domestic violence or experiencing domestic violence. So when it happened to me, I was just on my phone, like looking for resources, like where do I go? What am I supposed to do? And then somehow I saw the commissioner's, it said something about the commissioner's office. So I went to Upper Marlboro to the commissioner's office. And that's where I learned where you can go to the commissioner's office 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to file a protective order. What the protective order does is give you protection, and you get to also ask for protections not only for you, but for your family members, those who are in the household. And then you can also, so they give you a temporary order for 7 days. So Takita, okay, raise your right hand, we're gonna swear you in, we're gonna grant your order for you and your child. I'm using my case in what I experienced, okay? So my 7 days, I had to go to court after they swore me in. They gave me a court date to go before a judge. Again, I had never went before a judge. So now I'm before the judge, and the judge is asking me questions, and I can only answer to the best of my ability because I've never experienced it. So I'm saying, okay, I don't know exactly what I want to do just yet, but I just know that this was wrong and I don't want it to happen again. That's pretty much my response, But I want myself to be safe, my child to be safe. So that's pretty much the basis where I stated it, before the judge. And he was before the judge too, When we had to go back to court, that was tough. That was tough because now it's like we're drawing a defining line here. Like we're really at a time where, okay, now after the 7 days, you have to go before the judge again and they're going to decide if you're going to get a permanent order, okay? That permanent order can last up to 12 months. If in time there's a violation and it becomes very extreme, it can be extended even further. So within that order, the judge is like, okay, was there any support provided? What do you all share? So they're asking questions about your lifestyle, what you endured together, what you shared together. Because remember, this is intimate partners. So these are common spaces that you share. Who takes the children to school? Who drops off pickup? These are just different things that, again, are discussed. And you might not even have the money to get an attorney, just to be honest. Because remember, you're fleeing. If you all were sharing money, somebody will have a deficit. Either side. Either the abuser has to get the fees or the perpetrator. Or the victim. So these are just different dynamics. But once you get the order, they will, declare the terms and conditions of the order. Okay, well, you cannot go to the school if you do an exchange with the children, exchanged in public places like a firehouse or in front of the police station where there's presence, because you're not alone. The isolation cease and desist at that time because now you're in front of, again, not only law enforcement, but you're in front of cameras because now things can be recorded when you exchange in front of a police station or you're exchanging in front of a fire station. So again, navigating that legal system, it can be intimidating for you. Mind you, you're already dealing with intimidation in a relationship, so this is like another tier. But the courts do have advocacy groups that support. For me, in my case, I began to learn about it as I was going through it. Now, what I did do in my case, at the time my pastor went to court with me. He was the man that came to court and sat in that courtroom. He didn't even utter a word. He just sat there. but his presence was there. And I did not go along. I did let my family members know when I got the courage to finally speak about it, though. Because I didn't want to tell certain people in my family. No, I did not tell my mother and my father because I knew their reaction. But I did tell my best friend. And she listened to me for 4 years, and year after year, story after story. So for me, you may not always have a person, but what is available? There are advocacy groups online, virtually, because you might not be able to have a person. If you're in a rural area and you're 30 miles away from the nearest station, online may be your best option. So what virtual options are available? So if we're looking at Prince George's County, for example, the Family Justice Center has a host of partners. But then there's also the Progressive Life Center, who I support and also train. I'm a trainer for them. There's a virtual support group. Ms. Bobby just talked about her support group. So there's a lot of resources. One of the areas that you can look at as well is that funding that's driven and put into the communities. So there's a level of funding that's available to create the resources. And last but not least, if it does not exist, create it. Create it. And the reason why I'm saying that is because when I started to navigate this journey, my son was the person who inspired this company. My son said, Mommy, we keep going to all these domestic violence events, and they keep doing everything for the girls. That's all y'all do. Girl, 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 girl. Well, what about the boys? So I said, well, tell me what you want to do. Well, it needs to be something for the boys, Mommy. So I began to go into locker rooms. I like football, so I use football as an avenue to get in and talk about domestic violence and learn how to train these boys that are coming up. So when she talked about, the men being involved, we cannot say that we're doing an effective effort if we leave a large group of people out, like the men. We cannot say, oh, we're just going to heal all the women and leave the men out. No, we're out of order. Let's be real here. We're totally out of order. And most importantly, it speaks volumes when there's only one abusive prevention program, but there's a lot of services for victims. That speaks volumes to a community. You're sending a signal. You're sending the signal, okay, we can support you over here, but we can only do a little bit here. So that's why I'm saying if it does not exist, invent it. Apps. We have cameras everywhere. If you have to write something on a sign and put it in front of a camera for somebody to help you, do that. It's by any means necessary. It's not, we shouldn't think limited, and we shouldn't limit ourselves. So when we think about how far we can reach, if you're in the airport, you can go to a stewardess, you can go to a flight, you can go to the captain of the airplane. There are checks and balances at a lot of different stops because now people are more sober and alert. They're very vigilant now about small things and acts of violence. So people are paying attention. When you send your kids to school, maybe put a note on the kid, letting the teacher know, the counselor know. Kids don't know that note, what that note is reading to the full extent, but it may be a seek for help. Can you help us today? I'm going to come and pick up my child at 2:00. And I keep using children because, again, we have to think about this is the next generation that we're grooming, that we're raising, right? Absolutely. And so what they have seen, they will never dismiss. My son has never forgotten what he has seen. Nope. Ever. He's still too. Let me give you an example. When my son was 5 years old, one day we were in Target, just rolling through the aisles in Target. My son said, Mommy, do you remember when you got hit? I turned around and looked. Like, did you see something in Target? Where did that thought come from? And we're just in Target. His little feet are dangling in the cart. And it stopped me in my tracks. Because I knew I couldn't take that moment of time back, right? And so I just said to him, I said, yes, I do remember. But guess what? I'm not being hit anymore. He was like, that's right, Mommy, you're not. And he went on about his little moment sitting in the cart. So, again, when we think about the different strategies, we can't always think that everything that we currently have is the final say. No, we can still continue to invent and create more because, Years ago, when I was navigating this system, the Family Justice Center didn't exist. When I was navigating this system, it was Kathy, Community Advocates for Families and Youth. It was my sister's place. And again, I was over income for the House of Ruth. It was the House of Ruth. And do you know, my sister's place, they did give me a support system. But one of the things that I loved about them, they called me every summer to tell me that your kid qualifies for a summer camp. Would you like to send your kid to summer camp? And I used to always say, wow. I thought they still called me years later. They never stopped. And that's the touch that we need. Those are things that make a difference in the life of somebody who still has to live every day knowing that, yes, this was a part of my life, but this is where I am now. It has taken a constant level of healing. Did I go to therapy? Yes, so did my son. So we did the clinical side. My doctor even was trained. I went to my doctor one time for a backache. Do you know my doctor said to me, he pulled up the little round chair. Dr. Fernando Porter, you gotta love him. He was like, Takitha, what's going on with you? I was like, well, doc, I just felt a little pain on my side. He said, okay. Now tell me what's really going on. Did someone hit you? Has that happened? I mean, he asked, and I knew where he was coming from because he knew my history. He knew what I had been going through year after year after year when I would go to the doctor. So it's taking the time to really pause and see that person. If we do that, we can save a life.
I just wanted to add one piece about the, come on, the one piece about the protective order when you go to the commissioner's office. If you go, say, an incident happened on a Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, they're open 24 hours a day, and you are granted an interim order where you have to go to court the following Monday, generally, and you share your story with the judge, and they will determine whether or not you get if it moves forward, and you can get a 7-day order. Okay. 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 So, the commissioner's office, I'm so thankful that they are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because we know that those incidents happen frequently during those business hours that are closed, So the weekend that works, but it is an interim order that you can get, and then, of course, you go to the courts and tell your story, and then they would determine whether or not you were moving forward to the next phase. Just wanted to add that piece to it.
And can I just piggyback on this really quickly? Because some of the things that Takitha mentioned, you can certainly get, but you can also request things like that your abuser actually go to counseling, go to batterer's intervention, have some type of care with regard to their behavior. You can ask that there be guns, if there are guns in the home, that they can be removed from the home. So there are other types of things and relief that you can get when you do those protective orders. So, protective orders don't stop bullets. It's a piece of paper, but the idea is that if a person understands that by violating this order, they can actually go to jail, that can be a significant deterrent in terms of their continued access to you. If they violate those orders, then we definitely are going to have to be much more involved as service providers to make sure that, you are actually taken care of. And I love the fact that you said the one group was checking in with you every summer, because I think studies are starting to show that when it comes to domestic violence-related homicides, and really being protected from that, having that ongoing conversation, even if you sort of extricate yourself from case management with an agency, still having somebody call you to talk to you about these things and check in with you keeps you a little bit more aware, keeps you a little bit more vigilant so that you're not as complacent, because we know that that person can still be a threat to you. So again, having that continued contact with service professionals can be a lifesaver for folks.
When you're filing for a protective order also, the burden of proof falls on the petitioner, you have to prove before the judge that the incident did happen. And so that's not always easy. But when you stand before a judge, and it's very important how they write up their order, because the judge has to look at that order and determine if there was some imminent danger. But if you just say, I just want him to stop coming over my house, that's generally not enough for a judge to make a ruling on. So you have to be very specific, and that's why it's always great to have an advocate from the Office of the Sheriff to support you if you need someone to go to court with you, so that you can really understand what is happening, because a lot of times victims do not understand the system. It's overwhelming, as we mentioned earlier. I just wanted to add that point.
I wanted to add one more thing to what Ms. Bobby was saying. The documentation piece is very important. What I did not say was how I got the order. I've had multiple orders, but this one instance, we were exchanging our child, and I went to get my son, and things were not as favorable, okay? And the perpetrator spit on me, spit on my arm. So I had to take the jacket off and drive the jacket to the commissioner's, like literally with my arm out, that the evidence was there to get the order. Because that was the only thing that will prove that it happened. So there I was before the judge with the jacket, showing that this happened. So documentation is very important. You have to always show a pattern, or establish some form of pattern, whether it was verbal, digital abuse. So how many text messages, okay? How many call logs? If they called you 23 times on today, which is Saturday, and 17 on Friday, okay, the call logs. Screenshot it, save it, email it to yourself, create a folder, okay? Password protect the folder. You have to build boundaries and protections for yourself, okay? Because when you go before the judge, they're going to look to see where the pattern existed, how it was established. Now, if the person shows up at your workplace, if they called your job, so now your job is questioning you, saying, well, are you even able to work? Why does this person keep coming here? What does the visitor logs say, okay? If you happen to see a car that's in your community that you know is not your car, can you take a photo, or can you ask them, the Ring cameras that people have now, right? You see the cars with, so these are all different forms of evidence that can help you support your case before a judge. Because it's not that the judges don't believe you. It's what you have to show and prove. One of the cases that's really, that has really been national news was Mildred Muhammad's case. She had to prove the abuse. And it was in a way that she had to really write it down like a log, you know, constantly writing down what Muhammad was doing to her, you know? And that's just an example. Vice versa. Guys, how many times have the windows been busted out your car? How many times has the tire been slashed? How many insurance claims have you filed? So it goes both ways for everybody, but I'm just giving the picture of the form of documentation. You know, has your pet been harmed? How many times did you have to take your pet to the vet? How many doctor's visits have you had to have? You know, when we think about on the job, how many days of leave had you had to use? Are you now in a leave deficit, right? So these are things, even for supervisors and managers, to pay attention to with employees that constantly have to take off, constantly. Are you calling in sick every other day? So these, again, resources, patterns, and the way that you, documentation, I forgot to say that, but that's really, really important, because you're able to show, and you're painting a picture. And sometimes that picture is a blank canvas, but once you put all of the pieces in there, once you start painting it, it'll come to life. It'll take shape. You'll see the colors, the shapes. You'll see the light, the darkness. You'll see all of that, but document it, every single thing. Screenshot it, send it to somebody, email it to somebody. That helps you.
Just in line with what Ms. Takeda was saying earlier about documentation, I'm sorry, I just had to jump in, but just in line with what she was saying, because I really love those strategies. It makes it practical. It makes it really practical for whoever is leaving it right now. And I love it when she always goes back and say, men, do same. One other thing I've noticed in our health sector, or specifically in health facilities, you have some charts for people who probably haven't noticed. It tells you if you want to report something. There are colors as well that are written over there. I'm fond of reading a lot, so I noticed it. And in the situation where you are feeling threatened, your life is threatened. And I've noticed as well, when you go to the doctor's for your doctor's appointment, I have been asked several times, do you feel threatened? Is your life at risk? Are you feeding well? Are you in a setup where you could be abused? Or all those questions are asked. Now, I know that in intimate relationships, you might have your partner in the room, but those are rare situations where we can also document. Those are rare situations where we can document without it looking like we're doing it because it's a doctor's appointment. And then also during that doctor's appointment, there are times where we can literally drop a note, like Mr. Kita was saying. You can make it seem something that will make you heard because a voice that is not heard cannot be helped. Something that will make you heard for us to know. I know of a case back in Ohio where um, this individual constantly was reaching out to 911, but will not say anything. Those calls automatically go into the log because at the end of the day, there were calls that came over and over from this particular address, from this residence, and it begs the question, what's going on? And once that is going on, they are taking note. When it's needed, that can be a document. And I know this particular person did it over and over until a welfare check was done because they were like, this cannot just be happening. Either a kid is doing something or there's someone whose life is at risk. And that's how help came to this individual. Another thing, I loved when she spoke about even at the checkpoints when you're going through TSA, you can literally have that support if you can find just one way to document, especially where records are kept, at the convenience store, at the mall, wherever it is, there is always a way. A doctor would tell you an illness that is not diagnosed cannot be treated. You cannot just treat blindly. There's got to be a diagnosis. So, in order for us to get that diagnosis, we need all of this signs and symptoms to be able to put it together. Mr. Kita, I just wanted to say I really celebrate your courage. I celebrate your determination to break free, not just for you, but for your kid as well. I really, really appreciate it. I was at one point I was doing this. You probably did not see me, but I was doing this. Why? Because these are some of the examples that we don't readily have. These are some of the examples we don't readily see. You know, some of these stories are hidden among us, and people don't know this is a strategy. Another thought I had in mind was, let's say you're in a community, do not be alone. I know one of the power and control tactics of abusers is isolation. In fact, it's the one of the biggest tactics is isolation, making sure that you are isolated from community, making sure you're isolated from any form of support or anyone who can believe your story in case it goes out. So at the end of the day, they try to make you be that person standing on an island. But one way or the other, neighbors, I'm going to say something. If I compare both communities, both context, the African community, that is Africa itself, and the American community, whether African Americans, white, or whatever, the Caucasians, whatever, I noticed that we're doing this God for all of us and man for thyself. Some of us don't know the names of our neighbors. I know how the setup is, and I understand, Bert, it works against us. It works against us even unconsciously. You don't know what the next door neighbor looks like. You don't know what their name is. You don't know the names of their kids. When I lived in Ohio, I remember a comment that was made by one of my relatives. They said, "We've lived here for a while, but you showed up in a month and you know all the names of the kids in the neighborhood." I'm like, do you guys forget where we're coming from? One thing that is strong there is community. You know the entire neighborhood because it takes a village to raise a child. So it takes a community to be able to break free. So at the end of the day, support starts from the community. It starts from that neighbor who notices you're no longer smiling as you used to. It starts from that neighbor who has heard some sounds, and because they know you, they decide to place the call on your behalf. Sometimes it's not you who would report the case, it's a concerned party. That's why I said domestic violence plus compassion helps us break the barrier. So I just wanted to come back to what Mr. Kita was saying. The options are not limited unless we put ourselves in a box. And I know when you're the one going through the abuse, it might be hard to see through the pain. It might be hard to see through the lens of that tears. But if you really want to break free, honey, you would definitely see every single thing as an opportunity to get your voice out there and to break free.
I just wanted to
Thank
add
you.
real quickly that, when you're doing your documentation, also document what's happening with your kids, right? I was a kid who witnessed domestic violence in my home. Kids they're impacted as well, right? When they're going through this emotionally, you start seeing psychosomatic symptoms where, they're complaining about headaches, stomach aches, and all of those things. You're constantly taking them to the doctor. They can't find anything. They don't want to go to school. They want to be with the mother. They're clingy, all of those things. That should be documented as well and introduced into the record. And sometimes we tend to overlook that. We're not thinking about how they're being impacted. They are, like Pakita spoke about her son. I know I was impacted as a kid, right? And so I think that should also be included. I think a lot of times we overlook the impact that domestic violence do have on children.
Some of the statistics says that 3 million children witness domestic violence a year in the home. And if you think about it, a house under stress produce children under stress. And when they're under stress, then you're going to see the illnesses. You're going to see they are going to have peer problems. You're going to see that they may be at risk to use drugs and alcohol. In fact, the statistics says that 74% of these children that are witnessing domestic violence in the home also are exposed to very violent crimes. 1 in 7 children that are witnessing domestic violence in the home grow up and either they are bullied or choose to be a bullier. So it is impacting the home. So when you flee, you have to remember the little ones, that they went through some trauma. They may not be able to verbally articulate it the way that an adult can, but they certainly went through the same thing that you do. And don't think for a moment, just because they're in, little Johnny was in another room, that he did not hear or experience some of that anxiety and trauma that you were experiencing.
This has been an incredibly powerful, intense, emotional, spiritual conversation. It is an important conversation. It didn't start today. It is not going to end today. Thank you guys for sharing your time, your journeys, your experience, the resources that we have available. For those of you who are listening, for our audience, thank you for showing up. The first step is to show up, whether it's yourself, whether it's your loved one, whether it's your neighbor. And we all play an incredibly important role. Each one of us, wherever we're sitting, whatever walk of life we're in, whether you're the person walking down the street and you notice your neighbor who is not smiling anymore. Reach out, be that safety net. Recognize if this is happening to you. Recognize if it's happening to your loved one. And I love the fact that we're also talking about breaking the cycle of violence. Recognize if you are seeing this pattern of behavior in someone hurting someone else and step in. I believe everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone is worthy of being saved. It is never okay to hurt someone else, but it is always okay to reach out and try to break that cycle of violence. And so we need to remember that because it does affect our loved ones, our children, and they are watching. I'm going to ask if there are any parting last minute words that anyone wants to share.
Yeah. All right. I
Oh,
I
hang on
love
one
when you
second.
say you.
No, sorry, we have a question from our audience. Hang on one second. Go ahead.
No problem.
For a long time, I didn't even know. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of you all. This is one of the best ones I've been to.
Do you want to come up here?
No, I'm good.
No, okay.
You're right. Anyway, I'm okay. The old me would have said yes, but the new me, it's work to be done. So I want to say thank you all to you all. This has been the best panel I had. I guess it's because of where I am too in the moment. But again, I was very ashamed to admit in a domestic violence, emotional and physical. And for a long time, one day my kids, I didn't even realize I was so depressed because I was just working, doing this, working, going to meetings, just performing, doing what I had to do. And all the while, I was existing, not thriving, not living. And they looked at my refrigerator. Said, Mom, is your refrigerator? And that's when I realized it was so cluttery. That's when I realized I was depressed because of my refrigerator. So anyway, my question is because I want to talk about the link between personality disorders such as narcissistic disorder and domestic violence. That's my first statement. And then I want to talk about what healthy things are you as a survivor doing as driving ladies doing to be in healthy relationships. How you navigating that? That's what I want to talk about because I did some research on that narcissistic whatever. I didn't even realize I was in a narcissistic relationship. I didn't even realize it. You realize it because you grow up to say, well, just get along. It's okay if you have these problems. Just stay there, work it out. It's okay. But it was unhealthy. So anyway, the link between personality disorders, domestic violence, and then what does healthy relationship, what healthy boundaries have you put in place, both of you all? Okay, that's it. Thank you all so much. Such a blessing.
Oh, thank you. So I'm going to repeat the questions. I don't know if everyone could hear the questions. So first of all, thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. And thank you for sharing your journey. Create something. I love that. So the first question that you asked, and I think it's really important, is what is the link between personality disorders, narcissism, and domestic violence?
That's a
Is it on?
powerful
Okay.
question.
Thank you again, Miss Lundy, for sharing your story. Hey. I can only speak to the first question, but I'm not a mental health professional. I can only speak to what I know about narcissistic personality disorder, and aspects of it is this idea that they are perfect or that they can do no wrong, and that can cause gaslighting to happen. So for those who in the audience who don't know what gaslighting is, it's when you create when a victim is sharing their experience and the perpetrator is poking holes into their story to make it seem as if they were crazy or to make it seem as if that's not the case. And so when it comes to narcissists, they make it seem as if what what the victim experienced did not exist. Oh, I didn't do this, or it's your fault. You did. It's because of it. If you hadn't had done X, I wouldn't have hit you, or I wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z, things like that. So that's the link there, is like certain behaviors cause them to not take accountability for their actions, and lead the victim to think that it's literally their fault. Yeah.
And I have seen personality disorders where you try to problem solve, come up with a resolution, and it never is going to fit. There's always a reason why they feel that it's not going to work. You can never come up with a resolution. That's what I experienced with working with.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever looked at the correlation. I think that's a good idea. I'm going to definitely look into that. But I can see the reason that it would be very high because, as you guys already pointed out, the narcissistic personality definitely they need praises all the time. So they're never to be blamed. They're never at fault. You know, they always justify or minimize, right? And so it's about power, right? It's about having control, and that's what they seek. So I can definitely see how that could be very abusive in that situation. And then I also want to add, the narcissistic or personality disorder are very hard and difficult to treat because they don't ever want to accept accountability. They can't look at themselves. So yeah, absolutely.
I'm good. I love that question because, like the previous speaker just said, many times we don't look at this correlation between both. And I think it has an effect on both the abuser and the abused, the perpetrator and the survivor. When we look at these disorders and characterize them by distorted self perceptions, emotional dysregulations, and unhealthy interpersonal patterns, we can see for an abused person. I have experienced narcissistic abuse. And I love when we talked about gaslighting, there's also triangulating. When you are triangulated, it means that you are boxed in. It's like I take away every form or source of independence, any place you could depend on. So you are alone, aside from making you seem crazy. But I've come to realize that, like, we have borderline disorder, split identity disorder. We have antisocial disorders. People who have lived, especially from a childhood, from their childhood, tend to manifest certain character traits and personality traits because it was imbibed in them, it was put in them unconsciously. A child who has seen their mother abused might most likely become an abuser if that child is not, if that aspect, psychological aspect is not handled, because it has a psychosocial effect. I'm not sure I heard the question accurately, but what I'm trying to draw at is this. Psychologically, abuse definitely can affect the way a person is going to relate with their world. Their worldview will change. You will find a guy who is narcissistic or a lady who's narcissistic, not necessarily because I don't think God created us to be evil, because I think narcissism is evil because it is this grandiose image of yourself. That's just one personality disorder. But I have seen people who grew like this because they had too much appraisal. There are some of us who, instead of disciplining our children in love, what we call gentle parenting, is good. But we need to know to what extent, because the child you see today is the husband you will meet tomorrow. The girl you see today is the wife, the mother you will see tomorrow. So whatever we put in their bag today is what they will unpack in the future. So I really feel that the way we're grooming the children at home, sometimes overcompensating for the lack of a parent who is absent. There are single parents whom, in their way to compensate for the lack or the absence of the other, have actually birthed. So domestic violence actually has a way where it birthed these disorders, antisocial behaviors. Remember what I mentioned about myself. I literally had this mental switch that made me think my defense mechanism was be a tomboy. My defense mechanism is act like a guy. Literally, right now you see me dressed like this and everything. But years ago, there are people who knew me to only put on t-shirts, a hat, I would have a band or something, and I would have my shorts, my boxers sticking out. I would put on my sneakers, and I had this walk. I had this way that I would walk and behave like I'm a guy. Why? Because I wanted to stop that perception of me as this. I don't know the word to put the words to say, but indeed, it causes a cluster of personality switches. It can cause identity switches. And not always is it linked to when it is a physical battery. Sometimes is that overcompensation from parents. Sometimes it's the over appraisal. Sometimes it's that love that comes in a way to say, no, because I love you, I cannot discipline you. Even scripture says it, whom the Father loves, he chastises. So discipline does not mean I hate you, though I'm not saying spank your child. It doesn't mean I hate you. I'm sorry, guys, my lighting system. It doesn't mean I hate you, but what it means is I love you enough to correct you. We have parents who would jump in and say, don't tell my child what to do. That's exactly what you just taught that child. That in the near future, they should talk down on someone. They should let someone feel like their opinions don't matter. Why? Because mommy taught me to always shut down anybody with an opinion. Daddy taught me to always shut down someone with an opinion. So, yes, it definitely has a way of manifesting in our personality, and it causes some of these disorders, emotional dysregulations, and distortion in our self perception. So, I think it's a really good question, and we can look into it. Lack of empathy, emotional volatile, what's the word again? Vitality, manipulation, entitlement, projection, accusing another person for a behavior we did, entitlement, believing that we have the right to control the narrative. All of these things stem from the abuse and sometimes the things we fail to do in the form of love in the home. I hope that that helped with the question. I really didn't hear it accurately, but I hope that it helps. Chronic anxiety is
So
another one.
let me just,
Hypervigilance is another one.
of course. And as we're coming to the end of our time, I want to end on a really positive note. And the second part of the question that I think is very powerful is, having been through this, how are you now? Where are you now? How do you then transition to have a healthy relationship? So, Dr. Akiko, we're going to start with you to answer that question, and then we'll come back to our panel with that. So, the question is, having been through what you've been through, how do you then, and you've talked a lot about not being a tomboy, not your dressing, in a way that is more your personality. How do you have healthy relationships?
If there's one thing that living through any of these different spectrums of abuse that I have experienced, if there's one thing it has done positively, it has made me more empathetic. I learned to not just hear what is being said, I tend to look at what is unsaid, the nonverbal cues. I think it has made me more sensitive to the plight of others. So it spills over to my relationships where I can easily pay attention to someone who is around me, but they say I'm fine. but I've learned to ask the question again, how are you really? We've gotten so used to saying that question, and the answer is always, I'm fine, because it's a reflex. But I think I have learned to pause, give it a few seconds. How are you? If I was speaking with Mr. Kita, how are you? I'm fine. I'm like, hold up. How are you really? Sometimes we're dealing with a lot of things. So I've learned to spill that over, to be empathetic. I've learned to listen. I've learned to listen and not just listen. I can hear you, but the question is, am I really listening to you? So that is how it has helped in my communication with people. And the third one is this: I have learned my identity. I am not what someone did to me. I am whom the Father made me to be. Forgive me, the minister part of me sometimes comes up. But I'm who the Father made me to be. I am a light. No matter what is put over me, it is up to me to determine whether or not that cloth stays on. People always say there's light at the end of the tunnel, but I always say we forget the light in the tunnel. Why? You are the light. The only thing is you forgot to shine. So until you turn that light on, you might always think there's darkness, but there isn't. It's because your light is off. So I have learned my identity. I have learned who I'm not. I have learned who I am. Most importantly, I know whose I am. So it doesn't matter who says what, who did what. And I've also learned to forgive. Yes, I forgive my perpetrator. I believe that he was also a part of this negative web that the enemy was trying to build against me. I look at him also as a victim of this all, because it's not just one life that was affected. His life is affected, even if he doesn't know it, but I believe he does. I believe he does. But for the person who was narcissistic, I know it's hard for them, but I pray for them. This is how blessing, has been able to live through it all. My main anchor is Yahweh. He's always my go-to person. Always. He's always got me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So for me, healing has been an ongoing journey. I stand before you at minimum over a decade of survivorship. And in the beginning, it was very dark. I can't sit here and say the woman that you see today was the woman that started out this way, because I was ready to kill myself and him. It would have been a murder homicide, I believe it was, or something. How you all classified? Homicide, suicide. There you go, homicide, suicide. Yeah, because it was very dark. It took me to places I didn't even know existed in me. I mean, levels of anger, wrath, all of that. I went all the way there with it. And I was okay with dying. I had wrote out my will and told my brother, if something happens, here's all the documents, because I'm going to kill him and I kill everybody. That's how dark, that's a dark place. So to be the woman where I'm at today, one of the things that I have done, I literally gave myself to the Lord, my belief system. I believe in Jesus Christ. So my healing for me was a spiritual journey that I embarked upon as a result of my abuse, because I was in a very dark place. I was not dating anyone in between that time. I couldn't be with another man at that time, because what would I be to him? I would have carried everything from that relationship to that man. And he could have very well been a great man that came on my doorstep, but I could not entertain a relationship at that time. I told you all about counseling. Went to counseling, 3 years in counseling. My son did 7 years in counseling. Play therapy, he started out with interactions, play therapy, because he was in the developmental stage at the time that this was happening. 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, okay? That's one area of healing. Another area of healing for me, I did not remain silent. I wrote a book about it. I began to tell my testimony, because it's my belief system. Again, I'm sharing my story. I found the Lord in my walk, because it was only God. Like, the Lord had to show up to save me and for him, okay? I wrote a book about it, 2 books. I created a program, developed a company, went to the White House. I never stopped speaking. I'm still speaking to this day. So for me, I continue to speak, to serve my community, to advocate, to fight injustices that I know exist. So I did not stop speaking. For me, the healing also was a journey, because there was levels of, oh, I thought I forgave him. Oh, I forgive you. I would say that, oh, I forgave you. And then something comes out, oh, I felt that hurt again. That hurt really deep. So yeah, I got triggered again, right? So for me, it became a full circle moment one time where he asked me for help. And I was like, well, why are you asking me? Why you? And I had a strong conviction at that time. No, help him, Takitha. You have to help him. In that moment, he apologized to me for everything he ever did to me. And I still remember what that's like to this day. I remember that conversation. In that moment, something broke off of both of us. It wasn't dark anymore. The light was there. Now healing can take place. I apologized to him. I'm sorry for the things I said to you, because you hurt me and you caused pain. And so I was being it was a response to the pain that you inflicted on me. To the degree, I still pray for him to this day. No, I'm not in love with him. No, I'm not in a relationship with him. But again, we have to go back to, how can we help our community if we keep cutting it off and saying, well, we're not going to support and help? You can't just ostracize people and leave them out there to die, because that's what's happening. They're dying internally. They're showing up every day to go to work, to get a paycheck, but they're dead inside. They have no hope inside. There's no life inside. So for me, healing has been ongoing. For my son will serve with me. If he could be here today, he would be right here with me. So my son, again, became an advocate. He can speak from a second generation or a child's perspective, like Stephanie was saying. And again, it's ongoing. The last part that I would say, as far as my relationship, because you asked where am I at now, I started dating in the midst of COVID. The first relationship from the abuse, that was over a decade ago. It took a long time. Now, I'm going to tell you something. It has stretched me, because I had to check myself in a lot of different times in the relationship. Don't make this man pay for something that happened in your past, Takitha. He doesn't deserve this, and he's a good man. You know how they say on Waiting to It, say, he's a good man, Savannah. He's a good man, Savannah. He's a good man, Savannah. So I'm just saying that because sometimes we have to add humor into this, because it's so deep and heavy. But I did not date. And so now, my son is now a freshman in college. I now have the freedom. I gave everything that I had for my family. I wanted my family. I was engaged. We were supposed to be married. We had just moved into a house. It wasn't even 30 days that the abuse happened. So it separated us quickly and very drastically. And so I had to literally pick myself up, raise this child, and endure it. Now this child is off to school, and now I'm able to still speak and stand. Yes, there have been many dark days for me, very dark days I have been withdrawn, did not want to show up and go to work, did not want to speak to my fellow colleague. No, I don't want to talk right now. I'm not in the mood. If you knew what I had to go through over the weekend during the exchange, the child support money didn't come. Now I got to figure out how I'm going to pay this bill, pay for child care. I had to choose between child care and cable. I chose child care. These are real lifestyle decisions. So healing is still ongoing. And like Stephanie was saying, it's like, as a child, I had to always go back and look at my son too. Where are you? Like even now in his dating, in his relationships, we have open communication. Okay, so when my son says to me, Mom, can you talk? I stop everything I'm doing. I give him my undivided attention, because now this is my son. Remember, we silenced the men, not in my household. My son can come to me any given, he know it. I will stop to listen, to give him my ear, because that's critical. He may not ever want to open up to anybody else, but he got to trust that he got some form, somebody that he can go to talk to. My son still has his therapist in his life, and this is probably against the law. But his therapist did not stop being his therapist after the 7 years. He still shows up to graduation parties, birthday parties. We still send text messages. And I bet you this is probably like against the law for real. But my son still, okay. Sorry. But my son's therapist still shows up. And he texts and he still communicates. You know why he says that? He was like, this is really instrumental for me. It wasn't just about the job for him. He went beyond the job, right? And so that's the dynamic of what my son healing is. Talking about relationships now with him, dating, okay? Boundaries that I put in place for me, really simple. If you raise your voice at me, we got a problem. We can speak at a tone. I was a runner, so I would easily be like, oh no, we can just end this. We ain't got to go through this. We can stop this now. I don't run anymore. Now I sit there and talk it through. But I learned that in therapy. When I was in therapy, my healing, I understood this as a result of the therapy. And I never paid attention to this. Every time that I went back, something died. Whether it was financially, emotionally, spiritually, something died. And my therapist helped me to realize that. Every time you went back to Keitha, look at the pattern. What died? Who died? Yeah. Those are things that I learned in my healing journey. A lot of prayer. The prayer muscles that I have now came as a result of that. And I would not, to be honest, I would not change it. You all wouldn't be able to get the testimony that you have today, the resiliency. You wouldn't get this woman that has evolved if I did not experience that. So I didn't allow the shame to veil me and cover me up. I just continue to speak and talk and advocate because the silence, it doesn't stand with me. And that's where I think a lot of people, if you could find the courage to take a stand and speak, they gave me one opportunity, Kathy, Miss Arlene. She said, Takitha, can you come and do a video with us? I was like, sure, I've never done this before. And after that, I've been speaking ever since. It has taken me, I'm telling you, places I never thought. But as long as we keep speaking, keep providing the services, keep working, it gets better. It does. It really does get better. But it's going to take an effort, endurance deep within to keep going. All right? Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We have one more question, please. Do you want to come up here or you want to say it from there?
I don't, but I think if I'm project enough, they might hear me well. Because I used to be on stage. My statement is that when you've been in a domestic violence situation and are a victim, you are now labeled a victim. And just because that abuser passes away, you are still a victim. Every day is a day of surviving. I just wanted to say that because I put it on my page every year. I was like, people don't understand, but I understand. So my question is this. I literally have a friend who has moved in a house with their mother. They're both grown. But mom has basically been acting like in a relationship. She has alienated the neighbors against them. They moved to an area that's, peaceful and upscale and kind of off the grid some. Alienated it, told all the neighbors bad things about her. She does things like if she's cooking and she steps out the room, mom throws her food on the floor and all that stuff. And all because she's gotten in a relationship with a gentleman. And her mom wants all the attention for herself. So the narcissism.
So the question is, she's got the house in the name with her mom. How does she get out of the situation she's in? They've had peace orders against her mother, and when she gets mad, she calls the cops. She's had to defend herself in court already. She had a restraining order against her mother, but that only keeps you so far away from a person. And mom has made friends with the neighbors, so the neighbors are like, yeah, sure, you can stay with me. And so when she's walking by, the sidewalk is public. She still has to see her mom staring and glaring at her if she's sitting outside. And so she felt bad, she let her mom back in, and it's the same stuff again. So my question is, what resources is there when it's the adult and it's not a sexual relationship, as I want to say? Because most times when you think domestic violence, that's what you think of. Even though there's other ways, you know, I know siblings that's gone through it, and they're able to just kind of move out and go. But she has not been like in this area for like 20 years, so she don't have really no friends and connections and stuff. And her mom caused her to lose her job, and now she's looking for another job. So what is there for her?
Go ahead. So thank you for that question. It really, a domestic violence and intimate partner violence does not have to be limited to a romantic relationship. It can be anyone. It can be parents to children, children to parents. And the same resources are available for your friend who is in an abusive relationship with her mother as it is with someone who is in a relationship and being isolated and abused. And so the same things, having a safety plan, having your documentation, having your paperwork, being able to be independent and walk away. The hardest thing is to walk away. And so all of the same resources, all of the same ideas around safety planning, being able to be independent, being able to walk away, removing yourself from that situation, it applies. It applies to all relationships, romantic, intimate, or otherwise. So I know that we're right at the top of the hour. I just really want to pause. Thank you guys again for this incredibly powerful conversation. Most importantly, every step that you take in your life, thank you for showing up. Thank you for being vigilant. Thank you for looking around. And the only way we're going to survive this as a community is together. And so thank you all for everything that you bring every day, every moment.
To piggyback off of Dr. Sabi, can you hear me now? All right, to piggyback off of Dr. Sabi, I do want to thank all of you so much for taking time out today to be here to speak. This has been a very deep but necessary conversation, so I'm grateful for you. On behalf of our Chief of Police, our Mayor, and our Town Council, we also wanted to present Dr. Sebi with a gift of appreciation for her time and her dedication. So thank you so much.
Being here has been the gift.
Congratulations.
So this is our council member, Trina Brown.
Well, hello, beautiful ladies. How are you all doing this evening? My apologies, just in the throes of things this morning, getting prepared to having to go to a conference. But I do want you all to know that this is a very, very important topic. And so I'm just so glad that we had our leadership here, and being able to afford you all the opportunity to come out, speak, be heard, and whatever we can do, just please let me know. And like I said again, my apologies for just being late and not being able to be here for the full presentation time. But we are here to support. Anything you need, just let us know. Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Okay. Thank you. Yes. 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 Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Dr. Blessing, are you still here?
Yes, of course. I'm not going nowhere until we put a lead on this.
We did not want to ignore you. We thank you so much for your time as well, for joining us virtually. You have been an important part of this conversation, so we thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really look forward to connecting to all of the panelists. I was blessed by this conversation, and I'm happy that I was part of the discussion today. Thank you guys so much.
That's it, you guys.
Oh, wonderful. I want to share with you, I have